Hillary represents a neoliberal faction that has control of the party, and we represent a small minority that occupies, maybe 20%, maybe 30%, maybe even more than half. But definitely, we're not unified and we're not together and we're not putting our votes together and aligning what we really need to do to actually take control of the party. So we have to ask ourselves, let's say we were in her position. Let's say Bernie Sanders had won. Will we expect Bernie Sanders to go to Hillary Clinton and, cut some sort of deal and negotiate and basically water down the progressive agenda for, adding neoliberalism mixed in here and there? Would that be what we really, really would expect Bernie Sanders to do? Would any of us do that? I think if it were me and I had won, I would basically tell all the people that lost that I won and I'm moving along and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, which is what I said I was going to do before I got elected. Now, granted, politics being what they are, people are not always honest up front and whatnot. I understand that. But in all honesty, the neoliberals have won and they're moving forward with their agenda. And, in a hyper, win or lose society where everybody's competing against, one another for stuff, there's a winner and then there's a loser. And oftentimes the winner doesn't go to the loser and share the spoils. They usually just take them all for themselves. And that was the whole purpose of competing. So what we're looking at now is a victorious neoliberalism. That is what we're looking at. And somehow in our minds, I don't know if it's because we just desire it to happen so much. We're looking for some sort of reason or we're looking for some sort of action that we can, in defeat, claim victory. We want her to reach out to us and give us this or give us that. And think that I don't think that that's how power works. She won and she's going to do what she's going to do. All you can do now is make a decision whether you're going to support it or not. You don't have to. There's nothing saying that she owns your vote, right? But at a certain point, this idea that she's going to move to the left and come and cater to you, is also just as bad because she's not going to do that. She didn't have to. She feels like she owns your vote and she's going to roll on. So all this talk about being moved to the left, all this talk about changing the conversation and things of that nature, sometimes that is important because words do eventually lead to action. So changing the conversation is an important battle. But that's not the whole of the war, right? And I think G.I. Joe said it best that knowing is half the battle. So now we know. Now the question is, what do we do? And I guarantee you that if we're going to accept that she has won, that we also have to accept that she won and she didn't have to give us anything and she's going to move on and with her agenda, whether we like it or not. Now, in the face of that, what are you going to do? And provide historical context. I'm going to provide historical context. What if, I'm not even going to say what if, because this is actually what happened. When the abolitionists were trying to, rally to get rid of slavery, what if they had just said, well, this is the system that we have and we have to support it. And, maybe we can put a timetable on when we can get rid of it. What if they had just said that? What if they had, moderated themselves and just went along with the times and tried to, like I said, put a timetable on when something that was right needed to be done? What if they had just done that? I think that it is highly likely that Black people would still be chattel slaves today. There was more investment in the slave trade than there are railroads, telephone lines. And I was going to say one more thing, but I forgot what it was. But there's more investment in chattel slaves than there were in, roads and the telephone when it first started. That's how big slavery was in America and to the United States as a whole. Like, really, the United States was able to really come up based off of the forced free labor of slavery. So this idea that just because it was the right thing to do, that eventually it would just disappear into the night because that's the right thing to do, it's a really idealistic view of history. If you start looking at the way the world works and looking at what actually happened in America during that time, you will see that, progress just doesn't come on its own because it's been around for a long time or the battle's been going for a long time. That's not actually what brings about, real change. I'm always going to be harping on real change. I'm always going to be harping on that every day. Almost every time I do this podcast, I'm always going to be trying to remind us, if you look at history, this is not how change actually works. This is how this worked in this context, or this is what happened in that context. But that is basically what the neoliberals are trying to push now. Hey, I know, we're not going to give you everything that you want. More than likely, if you're like me, we're not going to give you anything that you want, but that's okay. You should still vote for us, because if you don't, all these horrible things will happen. These wars will expand, and, the great sea will come up and a meteor will fall on the planet and everybody's just going to die tomorrow. That's literally the kind of situation that they have us in. They want us to keep believing that. And I just feel like right now, what we need is courage. Because when you're really being radical, when you're really pushing the envelope, when you're really trying to get that systemic change, most of the time you're not going to be well liked. And most of the time you're going to be, kind of out in the wilderness, and you might be a little bit isolated, but you're just saying what many other people are thinking, but it's just uncouth to go out there and be in that area. It's not politically acceptable to, I'm sorry, I won't say that. It's not socially it's not socially acceptable to occupy that space of the dialogue, basically. Everybody's gonna look at you like, man, he's really out there, Why is he saying stuff like that? That's really out there. That's extreme. But in all honesty, that's the area you have to go if you're trying to move us towards something. Hillary Clinton is definitely all about keeping us where we are. And most of what the punditry and anybody that's supporting her is going to argue is going to be about trying to maintain what we have or keep us where we are, and try to fearmonger us with what could happen if we lose. But the problem is, staying where we are is also just as unacceptable as losing the position that we already have. We have to move forward. There is no back, and there is no staying where we are. That is where we have to be. We have to move forward. There is no trying to hold the line anymore, because we've done that for the last 35, 40 years, and it's brought us to where we are today. And the situation today is more dire than it was 30 to 40, 35, 40 years ago. That's the situation now is more dire than it was then. But yet somehow we're supposed to be happy about where we are today, because it can always be worse. It can. But just like it can always be worse, it can always be better.